Hi, everyone. Welcome and good afternoon. I'm Natalie Swachina, the Education and Residency Director at the Houston Center for Contemporary Craft. Thank you for joining us today and the next in our series of resident artist talks. Just a little bit of background on the program. Our resident artists have their studios at the Craft Center between 3, 6, 9 months in a year. Their studios are open to the public on Saturdays, and the center gives them the time and space to work on their craft and interact with the Houston public. Just so you know, today's program does have closed captions, so you can check that out in your settings. I want to thank Shannon Kreider from the Houston Center for Photography for joining us today. And I also want to thank Stefan Hillerbrand and Mary Magsamen for being our first interdisciplinary craft plus photography residents. That is co-hosted or collaboration between the Houston Center for Contemporary Craft and the Houston Center for Photography. So I'm going to hand it over to Shannon to give a little bit of background on the Houston Center for Photography. Hi, Shannon.
Hi, thank you, Natalie. So my name is Shannon Kreider, and I'm the Education Director for Houston Center for Photography. The Houston Center for Photography is a nonprofit photo gallery, educational space, and publisher of Spot Magazine. And through our Learning Center, we provide photography classes spanning the creative, including project development classes and contemporary history to the technical. So no matter where you are in your artistic journey, we have a class for you. And as part of our joint residency with the Craft Center, residents receive a printing stipend and access to HCP's digital lab, which includes a suite of Apple computers equipped with Adobe Creative Cloud, scanners, Epson photo printers, and a 44-inch large format Epson printer. We are thrilled to be a part of this program, and thank you, Natalie, for having us, and thank you to our residents.
Thanks, Shannon. And we're really excited to partner with this joint residency with the Houston Center for Photography. This residency was really developed to work with artists at the intersection of craft and photography, and those artists who are working at the innovations in both sides of the fields. So we're super excited that Hillerbrand plus Magsamen could be our first residents this past spring. So a quick introduction to Mary and Stefan. Mary and Stefan's practice utilizes collaboration, process, media experimentation through video, photography, installation, sculpture, and an interdisciplinary performance. They explore their relationship to each other and society with an uncanny sensibility that merges the real and the unreal, blurring boundaries between life and art, and often include their two children, Maddie and Emmett, in their work. Hillerbrand and Magsamen's work has been presented at festivals such as the Ann Arbor Film Festival, Fusebach Festival, and Current Countercult Festival, and Diffusion Photography Festival. Exhibition includes Grand Rapids Art Museum, Everson Museum, and the Center for Photography in Woodstock. They have received grants from Sustainable Arts Foundation, Austin Film Society, Houston Art Alliance, and the Experimental Television Center. And they've participated in numerous residencies, including the Vermont Studio Center, the Lower Manhattan Cultural Council, Santa Fe Art Institute, and upcoming, they'll have a residency at the Rauschenberg Residency. So they're here at the Craft Center in their studios until the end of this month. So you still have a couple of Saturdays left to catch them and chat with them. But we're super excited to welcome them today and learn more about their practice. Oh, and I should add, I wanted to add one more thing. Sorry, that Stefan is an associate professor at the University of Houston, and Mary is a curator at the Aurora Picture Show. So we're really happy to have not only such amazing artists, but local Houston artists here for our residency. Mary, Stefan, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Oh, there, unmute. Yay, thank you.
Thanks, Shannon, and thanks, Natalie. Thanks to both the Houston Center for Contemporary Craft, and thank you also to the Houston Center for Photography. We've been having a great time here in our studio. You see, we're in our studio right now. We've been working on these prints that were printed at HCP, so we were thankful for that. And we're going to give like kind of a brief overview on past work and talk about what we've been working on here at the Craft Center.
With the joint residency.
So
let's get started. Yeah, let's go. Let's go. So we'll share our screen.
So that's us.
That's us. This is
us many years ago.
And what we always like to do at the beginning of a talk is we've been in Houston now for 14 years. And when we arrived, like so many Houstonites, we kind of came here by chance, and we were like, what do we do? How does this affect our studio practice? How does this affect us as artists? And so we immediately kind of started looking around and thinking of our home as our studio. That's where we were going to get the materials and the ideas, and we were going to involve our children and our dogs and the plates and the couches and everything else.
So Household was a project that that we really enjoyed, and one that brought together all those things that Stefan was talking about. We photographed everything inside of our house, using our house as like a landscape or a stage set. And these photographs were all named after Shakespeare and mythological. This is Ophelia. The one before that was Sisyphus.
Digital inkjet prints, 24 by 36 inches. And as what we were trying to do is the camera was set up on a tripod with lights in our room. And it wasn't quite documentary, but it wasn't also staged, that we were trying to find these moments where we could go, oh, that's really weird. That's part of our lives. And maybe if we add a little bit of spicy sauce to it, it'll be interesting.
So the one before was Diana, and this one is Pandora's Box. So it's me and Madeline, our daughter, in a box. This one is Sharon. This is our son in his room, crossing his own river. This is our dog Penny. The piece is called Cerberus. She got in trouble.
We brought loaves of bread in from Costco and put them on the counter. We walked outside to get the other items from the car. When we came back in, she had already taken down 1 or 2 loaves and started eating them. And instead of punishing her, say bad dog, we said, okay, let's take the rest of the loaves down and create this wonderful piece.
So there were other pieces in this series, but those were a few highlights, the ones that we loved the best. After we did Household, we did this video called Whole, which was also filmed in our house. And what we did was we made holes inside of our house by chopping them with sawzalls and circular saws. And then with our kids, we kind of circle through these holes in this very futile effort to go somewhere, but we really go nowhere.
And what was, as we said, Mary is trained as a sculptor. I'm a photographer. Now we're, doing this wonderful residency. We really try to let our practice kind of take us in these beautiful and kind of joyful directions, just letting, sometimes it's a video, sometimes it's embroidery, sometimes it's something else. This was a project called Comfort. Along this idea of consumerism and thinking about our home, we went into every room in our house and took everything in that room and walled up the doors and the windows to either block up to create a wall of protection, or maybe to keep things from leaving. This is the inside of our garage with all the stuff. That's the outside of the garage.
And that was all just wedged in there. And then we took photographs and had the photos made. And then what we decided to do was send these photos to Walmart and get them printed on polar fleece blankets.
Upcycling.
So the idea was kind of like, talking about the accumulation of stuff in our lives and our kind of excessive consumerism, making it into an art installation, photographing it, and then sending that photograph back to one of the places where some of this stuff comes from, and having it made into something new now, these polar fleece blankets.
And also, again, fascinated with what photography can be and what can, how do we deliver it? Is it on a modern day tapestry like this? Is it a blanket? Is it on fabric? The delivery methods of the materials that we use.
So this was an exhibition that we had where we showed all of these blankets.
You can see all those crazy rooms in the house.
They're quite large too. They're like 50 by 60 inches. So they're
rented at Walmart.
Those are blankets.
We did a project called Higher Ground, which was commissioned by the Houston Airport System. It is now being displayed in the walkway at Hobby Airport. So if you're ever taking a flight out of Hobby, it's right there. And the four of us, our two children and us, decided to make a 3.5-story spaceship in our backyard out of everything in our home. So we just tore down the doors and the couches, and we took the plates out. We built this big silver spaceship in there, and with Home Depot and Barbie doll houses, we created, tried to fly the spaceship. Were we successful? Did it work?
Well, yeah, it was, in the video we take off, we do go somewhere and then we come back. This is an installation view of an exhibition. The project ended up growing, as many of our projects do. And we had a satellite, we made all kinds of memorabilia to go with it and such too.
The last project that we've done is called 147 Devices for Integrated Principles. Ooh, it's a big title. It was an interdisciplinary project that had performance and photography and sculpture. We did a 2-night performance at the Match Center here in Houston. We involved one of our close friends, a playwright, Kirk Lynn, from Austin, Texas, and a wonderful composer, Peter Staflinski, also from Austin. And so it was based around this idea that, as many of you know, that's our house. We live up in North Houston. It's not gotten flooded yet, but it's gotten pretty close. And one of the weird things.
This was from a photo from Hurricane Harvey.
Oh, Hurricane Harvey. As we started thinking about this, getting these hurricane preparedness checklists, in the mail or they're emailed to us. And we started thinking about being prepared not just for natural disasters, but political ones, emotional ones, family ones. Like if we needed this preparedness box of devices to help us out of a hurricane, perhaps we needed ones for a broken heart, or how to talk to our teenage daughter, or how to get our son to stop playing Minecraft. I don't know. Go ahead. So we did a multi-night performance project, and it was a performance that our kids participated in too, and it had video and photographs and sculpture. So it was, there was a lot to it. And the idea was this: we wanted to make a kind of a town hall meeting where we were going to tell people there at the Match Center how to use these fictional made-up devices that we created, the 147 that we made. And so we showed them how to make them physically. We showed with a slideshow pictures of the ones that we've already made. We had videos and such. So it was this town hall in front.
And it was also very interactive. So each person that came got their own little kit, and they got to make things along with us. So it was a very interactive performance. So
here's an example.
We've made in this project over 200 images. We picked out some of our favorites to show you.
Uh-oh, what's the title?
Put
you on the spot.
This one's a device for transportation. This one is a device for restraining contempt.
It's ice cream on our heads. And notice mine isn't melting, but Mary's is melting.
And so, as Stefan mentioned, we collaborated with this playwright, Kirk Lynn, and so he had written the script for the performance, and some of these titles came out of that script. We made some of the titles too, but this one is a device for 147 integrated principles. This is a device to forgive all those who you have wronged.
That's our daughter, Madeline. And people always ask a lot, what's the role that our children play? It's been less and less over the years, but with this past work, Madeline was watching us in the garage photographing, and she goes, I have an idea. And she ran in and she got the tape and she got these, and made this piece herself. So it's still a very fun kind of collaboration with our children.
This one is a device to talk to God.
So many of the titles are humorful. Some of them are serious. Some of them made from the playwright or us or others. People have kind of during the process said, I need something.
Or one time we needed a title for a piece. And so we asked our son what he would like a device for. And his response was, a device to get you to leave me alone. And we thought that was wonderful. And so I didn't include that image in there, but we did make him a device.
This is
it
a little.
It doesn't work though.
Here, we're gonna play. This is just a little video that we, let me see, a type of kind of Rube Goldberg-esque mousetrap board game where washcloths, trash bags, irons, silo cups, you know, everything that we found in our house, we try to make something make sense of the world, to find a device that can help us out, and having a lot of fun with it. Well,
and the project had 12 videos in it. So this is just an example of one of the videos. There were 12 videos total. There were over 200 photographs, and there were about 20 sculptures that went along with it. And we've shown the work twice here in Houston with Heidi Vaughn Fine Art.
Yay, Heidi!
And it's also shown around the country at other institutions as well.
Those were wonderful shows with Heidi's because she allowed us to kind of, oh, here we can actually go over. This is Heidi von Hart. That was the first time. Once we did the exhibition, people started to say, those images that you showed at the performance were so beautiful. Could you show them as photographs? Or I'd like to see the real objects. And so we immediately kind of reached out and said, yeah, let's start taking these items, these objects that we made, and we wanted to show them. This is an exhibition up in Philadelphia, and we were showing them sort of as in this vertical manner. And as we started to kind of print them and look at them and treat them as, you know, pulling them away from the performance, this is at Heidi's space. You can see there's sections of wallpaper, the sculptures themselves, showing it in this beautiful salon style. What really started to happen was that we wanted to treat these images not just as, you know, straight printed photographs, but almost like little relics. And we kept thinking of this idea of, you know, that thing that hangs in front of your car rear view mirror. It gets worn and we tape it up to make sure that it's working, that parking pass or whatever, maybe the thing in your pocket. So what we started to do is to start to stitch into them and start to manipulate them and kind of think of them as historical relics, things that perhaps we would have found in our grandmother's shoebox in the attic.
So this one is called A Device to Say Goodbye. And on the photograph, we sewed into it these little strings that hang down. This one is A Device to Forget. And you can see on the side, it was sewn into. This is a device for interpolating confidence. So as Stefan mentioned, our kids are less involved in our work as they've gotten older. Madeline is now 18 and Emmett is about to turn 15. And so they're less involved in the work. And Stefan had taken this photo of Emmett and he said, I really don't want you to
the most perfect portrait I've ever made in my life. He's so handsome and it's a beautiful portrait, but
he said, I don't want you to use it. So we said, well, what if we obscure your face? And he said, okay, I'd be okay with that. So we layered it with Scotch tape.
The most, you know, like we kind of almost ruined the photograph, but in a certain sense, it's beautiful. It is this layered half-inch, quarter-inch of Scotch tape, masking tape.
This one is a device for emotional intelligence. This one is a device for negotiating with your teenager. So those are threads that go across her arms, Maddie's arms. This one is a device for calming nerves.
And it's a favorite. It's of a white balloon, and we masking taped the clips, the clothespins to it. But then what we did is those are rhinestones from a hobby store. And once the image was printed out, we put the rhinestones physically onto the paper.
This is a device to love openly, another sewn one.
Oh, this is my favorite. This is me. That is silver leafed background, and then hobby rhinestones and hot glued paper clips.
It's a device for excessive baggage.
Oh, no, this is my favorite one. That one, the other one wasn't. This is it. What's the title?
This one is a device for engaging separation.
It's a big ball of power strips, but if you look up close again, we printed it out. This one was very large, 24 by 24 inches. And then we took the physical plastic rhinestones from the hobby store and placed them all over that. And it's just gorgeous, bling, wonderful.
So then we went back to that idea of blankets and printing images on blankets. And because we were thinking about how we were sewing into these photographs. And so we thought, well, we had done that work, the Comfort series, where we were making images on blankets. Maybe we should go back to revisit that idea. So these are two images that we had printed on blankets, and then we went in and sewed into them and sewed objects into them as well.
50 by 50 inches?
And you can also see in this photo on the far right, those are 3D printed sculptures. But
so we took those are those images that we had been using within the performance. This was called a device for protection. We printed it out 50 inches by 50 inches through Walmart. And then on the blanket itself, we're stitching, we're rhinestones, we're doing embroidery. We actually are taking the objects that are in it and kind of stitching them onto it.
This was the kind of companion to it. So this was for defense. There's defense and protection. Defense and protection,
right. Here you can see closer, the lines are the stitching and the rhinestones, and then little objects, the toy cars and the smaller items there are in it. Here's even a nicer close-up of, Mary calls them little stories, which I think is just a beautiful way to think of these accents.
So that brings us to where we are today.
Yay! So we're here now.
This is our studio. This is a photo somebody took that was coming by.
We've had so much fun. We knew what we were going to be doing, but it changed.
Completely changed.
But it has been such a great experience to have this moment where we kind of, to get away from the house, to get away from the children, and to have fun and to meet the other residents and to be in this joint residency.
Well, and we had been doing the Devices project for many years, and it was all primarily black and white. And so when we got in here, we were ready to start a new project, and so we kind of went on a color explosion. And we started making these objects out of toys and like discarded plastics, lots of Nerf toy things, little shovels, and they're just these old plastic things that our kids no longer play with. So they're kind of like these discards that we then were making into to new little organisms. Mm-hmm. Is how we were thinking of them.
Like so many people, right? We have this bin in a closet filled with stuff and we don't know what to do with it. It doesn't leave, but we don't use it anymore. And when we sat and began the residency, we just started having fun and building them. And they really became, again, these like little characters or these biological experiments or these characters.
Yeah. So we would make these, and if you see on the lower, our lower left, there's a shovel with the orange things sticking out of it. And so we would make them, and similarly to what we had been doing with the devices project, making an object and then photographing it, and then kind of giving it a background color and a space to reside in. So these are the photos after we photographed the objects.
So making the objects, then we photograph them, and this is just the prints themselves. Deciding on a nice circular kind of format, referencing kind of maybe a microscope or looking under a lens or maybe through a keyhole.
I mean, certainly COVID influenced us,
Oh,
and seeing
boy,
the COVID model every day. That definitely influenced us.
Whack on the side of the head.
But we kind of were thinking of these as these like characters. So here's a photo of the print after we then went back into it and sewed into the print and added little bits of sculptural elements back into it. And so then next, there's a detail where you can see the sewing, the thread that is in there, and then there's a little piece of a Nerf bullet that's attached to it as well. So yes.
What's so beautiful is that people is right now on display in outside of our studio here at the center, and people look and they're first. We love this kind of line where we keep people guessing with this project that they say, "Oh, it was created with some software." And I'm like, no, it's Nerf bullets. Oh, is that the real stitching, or is that part of the photograph? No, you have to kind of. You have to spend a little time with them.
So here's a couple of details of that image that was just up working with, we started working with multiple different kinds of threads and playing with thickness on them. But again, thinking about how to kind of activate these objects and create these stories for these objects and kind of give them personalities and multi-layering them with different medias. Just being playful. We're trying to be playful with color. We were trying to be playful with the idea of these organisms and making these little stories about these characters.
Let's see. Ooh, this is one of our favorite ones. And we don't have titles for them yet, do we? So somebody please suggest a good title. You get a free. Sure.
We've been referring to the series as strain because of the double meaning that the word strain has. That you can be physically straining for something, that it could be a strain of a virus, and so that idea that something straining your relationship. The idea that this strain can have lots of different meanings, just like these little organisms can have lots of different meanings. Here's a grouping. This is what's hanging outside in the hallway at the craft center here.
But everybody still needs to come and look. Just because you saw it on this wonderful the Facebook Live, no, you still have to stop by because there's still 3 weeks left, right? And you can come and look at it. But you can see they just work so well together, and they are like a periodic table or an alphabet, or this playful color paint by numbers kit or something. They're really quite great.
So, but when we started shifting and kind of focusing just on one color, and so we've been doing this orange series, which is what's behind us. This is a picture of Stefan Hart at work. The artist in his studio.
Yeah, I don't know about that. But what was interesting is as we started to do, let me go back there, when working in color isn't very natural for us. When we've seen color as it's there and we find it, but now we're actively making choices. And once we started doing that, at least, I think for me, we would go to the local HEB or the grocery store. We walked through the the hardware store, and we start noticing that these colors are just everywhere, and they're beautiful, and they're joyous, and hungry for them. And the one color I think that kept resonating for us was this orange, this safety orange, right? What a great idea. Beware, caution, orange.
So, so this is a photo that we took, and it was actually a photo that we did when we were doing residency at the Mosaic Project. You can see my hair is quite long, and maybe a little less gray. And so we kind of went back into it and manipulated it digitally, and then sewed the orange thread into it.
Do we have a close-up? Yeah. And I think that's what's been so wonderful about this residency, and having a chance to have the residency, is that it's interesting. We sit there and we've been trying different ways of making, different ways to deliver the material, but then we go into the computer or the hard drive and look at old stuff, and kind of, it's a moment to kind of take a breath, right? And reflect. And we saw this image that was 2 years old, and we're like, why did we pass that by? Let's see if it can be part of, you know, what we're doing now.
So this is this orange netting that also inspired the use of the color orange, and we desaturated a part of it, and then we went in and sewed back into it to bring the color back in through the yarn, and the threads just kind of are streaming out of it.
So yeah, and the picture is this really beautiful flat. It is the orange netting that you put over Christmas trees that like Home Depot will use.
Which was funny because after we got our Christmas trees, I was like, no, we have to save this. It's so beautiful.
We have to save the plastic.
And I was like, what are we saving this for? And then sure enough, he starts taking photographs of it, and here it is today. Best foundation.
Best thing we never threw away.
That Christmas tree.
How's that? Best thing we never threw away.
So this is also the wire that goes into your weed whacker.
Weed whacker cord.
Another thing that, you know, we were like, when we were looking for things to use as object in our work, we're like, oh, this orange weed whacker cable is really stunning. And so desaturated it, and then went in and made all these little French knots with the idea that it's kind of, you know, substance sparkling up out of the desaturated part of the arm.
And this work is so interesting because I think it has the playfulness and the colorfulness of the strain series that's in the hallway that we've enjoyed so much making, but it also has kind of a different, maybe a quieter, or maybe a somber feeling that the Devices project had in it. This one here is...
That's that orange weed whacker cord again.
Where we then took the photograph and desaturated almost all of the image to make it a black and white image. We went over to the wonderful Houston Center of Photography's Digital Media Lab, printed it out 24 by 24 inches. And then Mary, and this is so much fun about the collaborative process, we both went, printed it, brought it back. Mary immediately said, no, we need more color. Went in and used
just like
a wash.
Yeah, it's just an orange paint.
Orange paint to kind of highlight and paint around this clip. And then I went back and took charcoal after that a couple days later, and kind of made this gesture mark. And that's fun to maybe mention. What's so fun is we share days, like today's Saturday, and we share Fridays or Wednesdays, but then we've also come into the residency. Mary will come in one day by herself, and I come in and I'm like, oh, what's just happened? What did you do?
Or you're like, yeah. No.
Or I changed it. And that's so been fun.
Oh. I should add too that, I mean, part of the fun thing about being in a residency program is learning about the other residents' work. And so there's 4 artists in residence here at the Contemporary Craft Center. And one of the artists, she just finished her residency, Abby Preston, was doing a lot of work with charcoal. And after Stefan started putting this charcoal into the photograph, we were like, oh, I think Abby influenced. I don't know if she's watching, but
with the paper.
Yes, and so that's been a really great thing about doing the residency too, is kind of having different influences on our work than we typically have, and seeing how that has crept into the work subconsciously or otherwise.
Yeah. So we'll stop sharing our screen for now, yeah. And as you can see,
if anyone has questions,
we have how many with this latest work. Let's go out of the way. We have I think upwards to around 15 pieces on that wall and then on the wall over there, and we really have been influenced by the other artists here and in the making, and just have produced, you know, quite a bit. And we still have.
We're in the home stretch.
Oh no, home stretch.
We keep telling them that we're not going to be leaving though.
So yeah, well, and then that's really been nice. The time to physically be here at the Craft Center. But then the residency, really nice HCP has extended, you know, our access to the digital media lab. So we'll be able to kind of keep making things here, then have a time to print them after we have to move, and then keep the series going. And that's been very thoughtful, and it's going to be great. So that's our presentation, right?
Yeah. So I don't know if anybody's put in any questions. I guess, Natalie, you can tell us if.
Yeah, I can. Well, thank you, Mary and Stefan, for that wonderful presentation. I love learning more about your work and seeing the videos and hearing the stories, especially about how your teenagers are reacting to being subjects for your photographs.
Or not reacting.
Or not reacting to it. We have a couple of questions, and I'll invite anyone else to leave any more questions in the chat, and I'll read them for Mary and Stefan. You know, you just talked about this a little bit. I'm going to start off with my own question, but I'm so interested in just the idea of collaboration that the two of you have with each other, you know, collaborating with playwrights, collaborating with your family. And I wonder if you could talk a little bit more about that process. You know, is it easy to let go of that process of, you know, letting go of the control of I have to have it look like this and be like this when you're working with a partner or a playwright or your family?
Yeah, well, so we've been collaborating. So we met, I guess we didn't give a full background. So we met in graduate school. We went to graduate school at the Cranbrook Academy of Art many moons ago. And
madly in love.
And then then we move in together and we start sharing a studio, and we kind of naturally start collaborating. But we've been collaborating and exclusively collaborating because a lot of people ask us too, like, do you do your own projects? No, because there's really no time to do that. So we started collaborating before we had kids, even before we were married. It's been a long time. About over 20 years. So we've been collaborating exclusively. Okay, well, go ahead.
No, I have to tell. Collaboration. Here it is. I have to tell the mouse story. We were doing one of the first projects we ever did was a video, and we were in front of the computer and we were editing it. And of course, the computer only had one mouse. And we got in this huge fight. I mean, this drag out fight, because I would reach for the mouse and then she would say, no, let me edit. And I'm like, no, that's a horrible edit. Let me. And we had a fight over the computer mouse. And it kind of, that moment, we laughed afterwards and said, wait a minute, you know, collaboration, what works for us, what we think happens, is that you think you go into collaboration going, it has to be 50-50, right? We're always equal. But the equalness can come about in another way, meaning, let me step back and let you know, do what you're good at and your skills, and maybe it's 70-30, and then 24 hours, it's 60-40 or 80, you know, it all equals out. It's that kind of letting go.
And we always have multiple versions of everything too. So we always digitally, there'll be, whatever piece, and then it'll be MM, and then another one will be SH. And so we have multiple versions that we can work on. So working in a digital environment, particularly with video and digital photography, we can save as, and then we don't, and then we go back in and say like, okay, actually yours is better than mine, or whatever. And but it's not all that different from like parenting, right? It's like one person's doing one thing maybe more than another person, and then it switches, and you play to your strengths. So it's certainly not without its arguments. And
the residency here has been just the most wonderful example, because we walk into the studio one day by ourselves, and then we do something, and then the next she comes in and changes it or holds on to it, and then that happens a couple times, and then there's these moments where we're both kind of doing it, and there's this point where we look at a work or a series of projects, and we're like, oh, we really don't know. We've lost count of the versions. Yeah. We don't know who kind of started it or how many times we've adjusted it. And that's the beautiful point, right? Where we're like, oh, that blender piece we showed, who put that on and who taped that on? It existed for, several days of kind of going back and forth before we actually.
What's been interesting now is doing this orange body of work where we're painting onto a photograph. It's pretty permanent, and you can't really undo that. And but we have had to reprint things that we weren't happy with. So there's been things like that too. But it's a process, I'd like to say.
Yeah. And the same thing, just quickly with the playwrights and the composers, and we've really tried to force ourselves to do that, because sometimes it hasn't worked, but it really is when it does work, and you find the right person, it's just like collaborating between ourselves, where it's a give and take, and they start to understand. And we love these ideas that, work has music, work has spoken words and words to it. There are people, especially with our friend Kirkland, the playwright, there's things that he is so talented that push us and make us think.
And Kirk's been our longest collaboration. We've started collaborating with him on an experimental thing that Fusebox did when they were first starting, and it was one of those things where we're like, oh, that was really fun, and we have similar sensibilities, and so we've done, I think, 5 projects with him at least. And Peter, Stopshinsky, the composer, we've done several projects with him, but we've also done other projects with other composers throughout. So, yeah.
Well, that leads us.
Long answer.
Yeah, well, that leads us perfectly into one of our questions from the audience. So Maria Elise is asking a little bit more about the technical makeup of those films or those videos. Is the audio and the video recorded as the machine is running, or is it recorded separately and then added later? How are you making up this as it's going?
Yeah, we record our sound always separately. But I don't know, I can't think of a piece we've ever done where we have dialogue. It's always kind of performance-based, documented wherever, and then edited, and then we work with a composer, or we've done several. In whole, we made the music ourselves, we assembled it from music that we purchased. But and then for the Devices project, Peter Stopshinsky made all that music, and we would say, we want this, or we'd send him a clip and he would respond to it, or then he would change it back. And so and Devices was all Peter making the music.
And it's an interesting answer, because having a musical score to edit to, if you know the editing process, having a recipe, having a pattern to work off of, we really love that. We kind of can pull together the content, but then to be able to go, oh, this is how we're going to stitch it together. This is how it's going to be edited, or we like that. We like that kind of being able to push and pull against something. So working with, music that's kind of given to us, or that pattern, is really, I enjoy it. I like that.
And we usually shoot everything ourselves. We have worked on Higher Ground. We worked with John Carithers on a few scenes that we really needed help with, but I'd say 90% of the time we're shooting by ourselves and kind of composing things alone.
Great. Well, we have another question from Colleen. She's asking an open-ended question. She comments that a lot of your work seems to have an affinity for science or science fiction, space, microbiology, invention. Can you talk about that a bit, and whether you feel that's true and how that connection plays out, if that's something that resonates with you?
Yes.
What? Wait a minute.
So, I mean, yeah.
Maybe that's not the right answer to do on the Zoom street.
No, but like for Higher Ground, I mean,
Higher Ground.
And when we were in graduate school,
Devices?
we would watch Star Trek, and
well, that's why I fell in love with you, because you were a Star Trek fan. Oh my goodness, what the?
And we watched Doctor Who, and we love sci-fi, and I think even with the Strains project definitely has this sci-fi otherworldliness to it, and even Devices has a feeling of making these creatures.
I'm going to be thinking about this all day. Colleen, oh my goodness. I think it's right. Yeah. I'd never, look at all this gray hair. I've never thought of that. I guess it's true. I think what we've both agreed on, right, is this we call it a playfulness, or these kind of narratives, these like little stories that people, we always wanted to be like a fairy tale or a story. Like I recognize it. I don't know exactly what it is, right? It's not a copy. It's not Hansel and Gretel, but somebody would look at our work and go, oh, it's right at the tip of my tongue.
There's an uncanniness to it. There's something is familiar, but it's not quite right. Yeah, it's like surrealisms and kind of the Dada, ready-made, put two things together that don't belong together. It's something that we've always enjoyed.
In what better way than an imaginary 3-story spaceship in the backyard of Houston, Texas.
We went through a lot of silver.
That was a lot of silver.
We had many years of silver paint and aluminum stuff.
Or now orange. now we're going to go through a lot of orange, Home Depot orange of caution. That's a great question. Oh my.
So how many times have you had to, redecorate your house from using your house as materials, using the doors as a spaceship?
There was for a while we were constantly tearing apart the house. We did a piece where we cut up a sofa. We did hole where we cut huge holes in the walls. Higher Ground was cutting the doors off.
We had no doors in our house for about a year and a half, and eventually the kids were like, I gotta close my door, and we're like, no, and we eventually had to go back. The worst part is that, like you can see with all of our, we got to go, all the wonderful, oh no, we messed it up, is that we steal things from the kids. So they over and over, if they were here now, they would go, yeah, my favorite toy, my favorite this. One day I blinked and there it is in mom and dad's art. And so now the same thing is happening.
We did a series called Mandalas where we were taking all of their toys and making these huge mandalas out of them. And they weren't very happy about it.
It is memorializing the work, the toys in a sense too, giving it a second life, cycling them.
Yeah.
And I think we hope that kind of helps out with the with these kind of fairy tales, you know, that people, we love it when people are looking at our work. We hear this now on the Saturdays, and people walk by, and before they actually get to the door, we can hear them talking about the work they see on the wall. And when they have little children, and you can hear somebody go, Dad, that's my Nerf bullet, or like, oh, Dad, that's my, you know, that's my plastic, you know, toy. I recognize that. And that's really nice. You know, work, all work, creative work should have kind of a nice entry point, like that we can look at it and say, I feel very comfortable entering into it and thinking about it, and that's what we try to do.
Wonderful. Well, I think we have time for one last question. So David asked, or he mentions too, that clearly the spirit of play is one of the main things animating your work. He's wondering if the ideas or themes that come out or after the fact are something that you project and go, or that you go into with the project with, that idea of the spirit of play.
This will be fascinating, because
we'll have two different answers to that. No, I mean, so much of our studio practice is about experimentation and process, that, you know, a lot of times it's just like working with materials that we kind of gravitate to and experiment with, and then kind of after the fact going back and being like, okay, I could see, you know, an avenue here that we could be talking about, or, you know, the work could go in this direction for, you know, figuring out what it's about. But so much of our practice is just experimenting, and except for videos, you know, you have to have a, you know, you have to kind of script those out a little bit more. So we do, but even those we would reshoot and reshoot and reshoot.
I think it comes always afterwards, meaning.
So we weren't so far off.
No, we weren't. That's so funny. Meaning, like, we will make work, and either we make individual pieces and we work on them, or we're collaborating, and then we'll show somebody, and they're like, oh, that's so funny. And we're like, no, this was a serious, dark, brooding, you know, this was heart-wrenching. And they're like, no, it's really funny. Or I'll do the same to Mary. I was like, I was agonizing over this. And she goes, oh, it's so cheerful. And I'm like, what's happening? And I think that's kind of the funny thing, is that play is, you know, humor and play is very hard. It's very hard to tell a joke. And I think if you try, or at least in our experience, when we've tried to do that, to do something playful, or say, oh, we'll embrace it, it works out horribly. There's lots of work that we have never shown anyone.
Well, and I always say that, you know, if you can make someone laugh, then you're touching some part of them, you know, and even when I was in graduate school, part of my thesis was on the power of humor, and how that connects to people. If you can connect to someone by making them laugh, it means there's another idea behind there.
But I don't think we've ever tried to make work now, you know, in the last several years, of like saying, this is going to be playful.
Yeah, no, and we never be like, okay, we're going to make a project about environmentalism. You know, it's like, we just kind of start working in the studio.
And you know, we always talk about is within our practice, and what we think is that all makers, everybody who is creative, has what I call the tinkerer in them. You know, it's this kind of this mad scientist, or, you know, going into your garage and creating, you know, something crazy. There is this kind of playfulness of maybe recreating that childhood Legos and toys, and look, I just put that together. And I think we may be thinking with our adult brain about something serious, but within our hands and our action and our process, we're more of the child or the tinkerer who says, this is really cool when I grab this clay and this wood and smash them together. And I'm glad that the play comes out. So it's a good question from David, that I'm glad the play is seen.
Well, what a nice way to wrap up our talk this afternoon by talking about this idea of tinkering and play and you know, working in a studio such as, you know, our open studio. So that's a very nice, you know, bow on the end of a wonderful look into your studio and into your process. And I want to say thank you to both of you for, you know, being our first interdisciplinary craft plus photography residents. You know, we've really enjoyed having you as part of our community at the Houston Center for Contemporary Craft. And I also want to thank the Houston Center for Photography for collaborating with us on this residency. And we are continuing to have another resident next cycle as well. So stay tuned to hear more about our next interdisciplinary craft and photography resident later this summer. So Mary, Stefan, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today. I know I loved learning more about your process, and I'm definitely going to miss walking past your studio and seeing all the bright, you know, bright sculptures. And I swear every time I walk by, it changes and it's a different arrangement. So I'll have to come bug you and ask for some photos and a studio visit later just to keep updated. Well, thank you
so
both.
much.
Thank you. We appreciate it. Thanks.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks for joining us. We will have one more resident artist talk later this summer with our 3 residents who will be here this summer. So tune in July for that, and we'll put it in our e-blast and our social media when that specific date is. Again, thank you for joining us for our resident artist talk with Hillerbrand and Magsamen today at the Houston Center for Contemporary Craft, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.